Thanks very much, Dr. Walron. All protocol observed, I want to recognize Mr. Gill, Ms. Baron George, Ms. Hardin, Mr. Sheldon Jackman from the EU, our local rep here, all the Director General, all the program heads who are here. I see GSMA head is here. So that shows that we are collaborating and partnering with various stakeholders in the country. Before I begin to say what I want to say, I want to highlight three areas that would have Mr. Gill would have mentioned just now. Lack of regulatory framework, underperforming agri-food system, interregional trade constraint. These three are very critical areas that we have to deal with. We have to address if we want a good agri-food system. We want an agri-food system that will be performing, so to speak, so that we can approach 2025 with optimism and we can achieve our targets in reducing the food import bill of the region by 25% by 2025. When I say lack of regulatory framework, we recognize that as a country, we recognize that. And also the lead head on agriculture in CARICOM, His Excellency the President, our President would have already instructed that we look at to modernize our framework, our regulatory framework in the country. That is why before the heads of government meeting in Guyana, we are working very aggressively. We want to put out a food security bill, take it to the National Assembly so that we can have those frameworks in place. We are working very aggressively on that. We are looking to see how we can also look at a regional food safety bill around the region so we can incorporate the region as an entity. Over the years, before 2020, we had a lot of regions, or a lot of countries, that were underperforming because there was never the political will in CARICOM to move this process forward. Before 2020, I want to say that countries, although they would have met, deal with an issue, decide on an issue, but when that activity would have completed, they go back to their various country and try to do what they were doing before. But after 2020, we are now seeing the political will by the heads of government in CARICOM to move this process forward. And that is very good for us. That augurs well for the Caribbean, where you have the head of state now. They have recognized the importance of the agri-food system. They have recognized for us to survive as a region that we come as one and we produce as one. That is why over the last 3 years, although Guyana have been actively and aggressively developing its own agriculture sector, move this process forward in our country, we have been also working with other countries in the region to help them to move their sector. For example, Barbados, whose economy was built only on tourism. We know that tourism is the main revenue earner in that country. We are now working with them to set up their shade houses. We have about 25 shade houses we are already set up in Barbados. We are now working with them to start the production of brackish water shrimp. Who would have imagined a tourist island in Barbados, a place called Brown Pond, will produce brackish water shrimp that we are producing in Guyana? We are working with the Eastern Caribbean countries. Recently, only last week, the minister from St. Lucia, the Honorable Minister from St. Lucia, the Agriculture Minister, and his team was in Guyana to see what we are doing so that they can replicate that in St. Lucia. Of course, the Honorable Prime Minister was in Guyana, who had a discussion with the President, and he wants us to also push for St. Lucia to have these kinds of development. And those are countries that whose economy was built on tourism and banana and things like that. So we are moving. And I think programs like these are important to bring stakeholders together, to train stakeholders together so that we can move the process forward. Trinidad and Tobago, we are now helping them to resuscitate their rice industry. Only recently, last year, we would have sent 100,000 tons of seed paddy to Trinidad and Tobago, and now they are moving their rice industry once again. These are achievement for us in the Caribbean, right? And I think that when you talk about underperforming agri-food system, we are now addressing that issue, and we are addressing it very aggressively. And countries, as I said, who never thought of going into the agriculture, producing their own food, are now today moving that process to produce their own food, and that augurs well for us. And I am very optimistic that with what Guyana is doing, we can achieve 25 by 2025. And the last point before I want to talk about the interregional trade constraint. That is a serious problem for us. And as I am speaking here, we are now addressing that aggressively. We have technical teams. For example, there is a technical team from Guyana and Trinidad working to remove all the non-tariff barriers. There is a technical team from Barbados and Guyana working to remove the non-tariff barriers. And we have been making progress in those areas. And we are now looking at commonality. What is good for one country should be good for the other country. For example, when you send the pepper to Trinidad and Tobago, they do want it with the stem. When you send it to Barbados, they want it without the stem. These small things affect trades relation between countries. So when I said that the heads are showing the political will, now we are aggressively moving forward, because with the ministerial task force and the prioritized commodities that we have identified, I think that all the 15 member states and the 5 associated states will move this process, and I think by the end of 2025 we can achieve that 25% that we set ourselves. That is out of Mr. Gill's presentation. I wanted to highlight those 3 areas. Very, very important area. And I think that you should do back this presentation. I don't know who are the persons, but we should ensure that this presentation here, we ensure that our people listen to it, have copies of it, and see what are some of the issues that the Caribbean community are facing. So we are here to launch 2 groundbreaking projects, and that will significantly impact the agriculture sector of Guyana. And we have heard all about the projects. We have heard the importance of these projects because it holds immense importance for Guyana as we address critical challenges while unlocking new opportunities for growth and development. And as Minister of Agriculture, it brings me immense pride to be here before you and share the exciting development that lies ahead. These 2 projects will enhance our agriculture capacity with the support from the Caribbean Development Bank and facilitated by the European Union Economic Partnership Agreement, the CARIFORUM, and the CARICOM Standby Facility. The agriculture sector of Guyana is currently undergoing rapid transformation, as I mentioned, as many initiatives are being executed to ensure the availability, accessibility, utilization, and stability of food, driven by both the public and private sector. And we have in Guyana a very healthy relation with the private sector, where government, and we have a lot of PPPs partnership, for example, with the new crops that we have embarked on. Government is doing the infrastructure. We have built massive infrastructure development in the Takama Savannah. We have built the road, we have built the silos, we are now building a wharf, and there's a consortium there with private investors who are doing the planting with the corn and soya. That's the kind of partnership augurs well for us. And we have been moving with various private sector. For example, we have one of the largest hydroponic farm in the Caribbean that is at Monrepo, right here, at the back here, private-public partnership. So that we have been moving in that sector. The policy implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture are aligned globally with achieving the SDGs. That's the most important one. Guyana has prioritized food security, climate change, agriculture financing as priority areas as we seek to achieve zero hunger. SDGs 2. In 2024, $72.6 billion was allocated this year to the agriculture sector in our national budget to continue our agriculture development both nationally and regionally. And I mentioned some of the works that we have been doing regionally, and we are seeing exciting times in Guyana where the entire agriculture sector is being transformed. Not only we are seeing massive growth in the livestock sector, but if I could mention in the aquaculture sector, we have seen over 600% growth. This morning I was so elated when I was coming here. The principal fisheries officer sent me a report that for January we have produced 94,000 kilograms of brackish water shrimp. And when we started out, they used to produce 10,000 kilograms. So that shows where we started and where we are today. And that is the most aggressive sector in terms of growth in the agriculture sector. The aquaculture and aquaculture sector, aquaculture activity now is becoming an industry in Guyana. We are seeing more and more people are getting involved, and this here will become a very lucrative sector in the agriculture sector. Very shortly, in a matter of month, in another month time, we will start the production of prawns, freshwater prawns coming out of Guyana, and those things have those areas, those sectors have the capacity to bring a large set of revenue to the people them who are doing those production. Further, to advance the CARICOM agri-food system agenda, the approach includes strategic partnership and regional collaboration between government, international partners, and the private sector, in keeping with the mandate of reducing the food import bill by 25% by 2025. And I talk about it. The first project, the development of a food products traceability system for pineapple and leafy greens in Guyana, is a transformative initiative that underscores our commitment to ensure quality and safe food. The traceability system in agriculture and the food sector is particularly important. An effective one can promptly identify, single out, and remove unsafe food products from the market. And we are having a lot of that in our market in Guyana. I'm hoping that these things can eradicate it and remove it. Food traceability is a requirement for access to specific regional or international markets. For Guyana to become a major exporter of agriculture products, we are ensuring that systems are in place for us to meet all the requirements. And I mentioned some of the systems. Also, I want to say that Guyana is building a regional food hub. We have started last year, and this year we have allocated another $800 million to continue the building of a food hub on the Linden-Soesdijk Highway, so that we can distribute food across the Caribbean. And with the intended ferry to come on board with Trinidad, Barbados, and Guyana, that will help us tremendously to boost inter-regional trade, move product from one country to the next. So I think that we are now, as I said, with your presentation, when I listen to your presentation, I don't need my notes. We can talk on those. Those are important areas that you mentioned. Those are important areas to bring the Caribbean together, to mobilize resources and human resources in the Caribbean, to bring them together for the production and benefit for the region's population. We have seen what has happened during the pandemic. We have seen what many countries around the world who had large sums of money, large financing, were unable to procure food because there was a scarcity of food, there was a downturn in production. And I think that we have to move if we want to survive as a region. We are the second most disaster-prone region in the world. At the ministerial task force level, we are working now to have an insurance product where we can have an insurance company to compensate farmers. When I became Minister of Agriculture, the first year in my office, we had one of the most devastating flood in the history of Guyana, the worst flood. And we had to find money from government coffers to go back and give the farmers to go back to the land. We made available $7.8 billion to give relief to farmers. But when you have and let me tell you, government can give all the amount of money, but farmers will never compensate. That will not be enough for farmers to compensate them. So an insurance product will be good for us in the Caribbean to move this. And we are moving. We have two prospective client companies, and I am hoping that very shortly we can move the process forward. So I think this forum here, I want to compliment all the organizer, the person and the organization that are funding this program. I think this is very, very important. We have been continuing to focus on diversification of the agriculture sector and growth of our other crop subsector through several initiatives, and we talk about it. We talk about, and you mentioned about the One Guyana Shade House project, that how we are now trying to get young people involved in agriculture, because in the Caribbean, not only Guyana, in the Caribbean, there is a perception amongst young people that agriculture is a menial job, agriculture for old people who never went to school. In Guyana, we are changing that perception. We have hundreds of young people who would have graduated from the Guyana School of Agriculture with a diploma. Hundreds of young people who would have came out from the University of Guyana with a degree, agronomy, and many more who would have studied from the Gold Scholarship and other university and tertiary institutions around the world. And they are not practicing what they study. They are not sharing their experience, lending their experience, what they have learned in the classroom. Many of them are pushing paper as clerk. So we have changed that perception. We have formed a company. We represent a former company called the Agriculture and Innovation Entrepreneurship Program. And we are making them shareholders of this company. And at the end of the year, they are producing a lot of fresh leafy vegetables, things like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, bell pepper. Those things, they are producing high-value crops. Now in 2021, we would have imported $2.6 billion in these high-value crops. Now we are certifying this area, and we have almost taken up 50% of the demands in the hospitality industry in Guyana. Imagine that, young people. Young people now are earning their own livelihood through agriculture, what they have learned and what they will teach in the classroom. They are now practicing it. We have hundreds of young people who are member of this Shade House program that we have here, and we will replicate through corporate sponsorer. We will now replicate the hydroponics farm that we have here in regions 2, 5, and 10, where we are targeting at least 100 young people from these areas, minimum, and that will increase tremendously. So the same benefit and opportunities that exist here will be existing across the country. That is the main thing, that we have to make opportunities available for people so that they can be able to produce. And that is what we are doing. And I think that is very important for us. The second part of the project is important also for the livestock industry. We have intensified a lot of activities that we used to do in a small way. AI, artificial insemination. We have started now a new program where we have signed a contract with a Brazilian company to do embryo transplant. And these things, and we have imported better breeding animal for the farmers. So this here that we are doing will safeguard the livestock industry. We are in the process of building a state-of-the-art abattoir in Region 5, where we are now looking to develop the cattle industry, both in beef and dairy. We have DDL, a private company, with a company from Israel now are working in a $20 million US dollar investment to set up a dairy plant on the highway. We have another dairy plant in Region 5. So this program that you all will be implementing and help us with will help us tremendously in our work in Guyana. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge the invaluable support of entities like the Caribbean Development Bank in making projects like these reality. Their unwavering commitment and partnership have been instrumental in bringing these initiatives to fruition. And this is not only the first time. Many projects since I became Minister of Agriculture. We are also deeply grateful for their expertise and guidance, which have played a critical role in advancing our agriculture agenda and fostering sustainable development in Guyana. I also want to extend all my gratitude to all other stakeholders and who I have mentioned before. I think this is an important activity for us. I want to compliment each and every one of person who will be involved. I want to compliment the resource personnel, and I want to compliment these supporters here to our country's agriculture development. I think Guyana is on the verge of taking off. We are seeing a revolution in agriculture. I am not being prejudiced here, but when you have an attractive industry like the oil and gas industry that is bringing a lot of growth into our country, when you have countries' economy that are contracting around the world, and you have a growth of 7% in the agriculture sector, that is something, a lot of achievement for us. Because we have seen that were able to have a growth during a condition that we are experiencing now, El Nino condition, where we have seen rice production move from 610,000 tons 2022 to 653,000 tons in 2023. We have seen sugar production increase from just about 40,000 tons in 2022 to 60,000 plus tons in 2023. And all these crops need a lot of irrigation. But what we have done, we have put system in place. We have made the investment in the sector. And because of what we have done over the last 3 years, farmers and stakeholders are benefiting from the investment that the government is making. And in this year's budget, as I mentioned, $72.6 billion. What we'll be doing, we'll do in a large mega structure, things like the Hope Light Canal, so that we can have proper drainage, proper irrigation for farmers. So the groundwork is being laid. The heavy lifting is being done now. And by next year, 2025, all of us will be proud that we can achieve the 25 by 2025. So with these few words, let me thank you very much. I wish you success, and let us hope that this program will enhance the agriculture sector in our country. Thank you very much.